I am currently working on a video where I try to beat TDS with every single Pokemon type, and I went and made a spreadsheet that has every single tower and a bunch of different skins that illustrates what type each of them are, as you can see here. And I figured that as sort of like a prequel to the first video, I would go through my logic with how I decided all the typings for every tower. So this is how I gave every single type in Pokemon a designated roster of towers and skins in the game TDS, so you can get loadouts that can ideally try and get close to beating Fallen. To start, I thought a couple of ground rules when deciding what towers get what types should be added in. I cannot just say that bullets are steel, because otherwise like 90% of the towers are steel type, you know? Like, I was very reserved with how I use steel type just because like you could probably make an argument for everything in this picture to be steel in some way. I decided to make all splash damage like bomb towers fire type. To be honest, I don't have a great reason for this, I just thought in my mind that made sense and I kind of just went with that. Aside from that, I wanted to have at least one tower to represent each type, and I tried to give types to towers that had less representation when I could, just so there's a bit more variety than just steel and fire types, you know? With all that out of the way, let's get started with each tower's type, starting with beginner towers. Because I said bullets can't equal steel, I didn't really know what to do with scout, sniper, hunter, soldier, and militant. They're all kind of just default guy with gun. So they're all normal type. I also made Paintballer and Demoman normal type, however Demoman follows this bomb equals fire type trope. And Paintballer I thought made poison. Now, that might sound a bit weird, and it kinda is, but I am gonna make a couple of leaps in logic here just because I have to sometimes. And Grafaiai is a paint-based Pokemon. You see this monkey? He paints on the trees, right? He probably doesn't paint with the same stuff that they use on paintballs, but they both have paint in them. And Grafaiai is poison type, so Paintballer can be poison type. I actually made Paintballer the exact same typing as Grafaiai, so maybe they're related in some way, I don't know. Crook Boss, Freezer, Pyromancer, Ace Pilot, and Military Base were all pretty self-explanatory monotypes for me to make. I made Crook Boss Dark, Freezer Ice, Pyromancer Fire, Ace Pilot Flying, and Military Base Steel. I made Assassin Fighting in Dark because Assassination seems like a dark type thing to do to me, and Fighting type is what I gave to a lot of the melee towers just because they're the only ones who are actually like fighting. I also gave it to Shotgunner. While he's on a melee tower, he's pretty close range up in your face, and it's the only way I could make him not steel type, and I don't want to have too many of those, as I mentioned earlier. Farm was a bit interesting. I thought about Monograss, I thought about doing Grass Psychic for the Space Fruit thing, but I eventually went with Ground Grass. I didn't have enough ground types after my first pass through the towers, and I figured that Farm was a pretty easy one to make ground. Trapper was one of my other ground types because its traps are on the ground. It's not a great reason, but I need ground. Trapper's also a steel type because all of its traps are steel based, like the landmines, the bear traps, and the spikes. I was always going to make Medic Fairy type due to the fact that light in Pokemon is often associated with that type, but I wasn't really sure what to do with his second type, whether to make it Solo Fairy or Fairy and something else. I eventually settled on Fairy and Flying, because it has wings so it might be able to fly, and it's like an angel and they can fly, I think. And I had two flying types in Ace Pilot and Pursuit and wanted more. The other one was Rocketeer. I thought about Mono Fire, Fire Steel, but I eventually went with Fire Rock. This is because I had literally 0 rock types after going through every single tower, and I needed at least one, so this is one of the two that I ended up changing. The reason I made Rocketeer rock type is pretty simple. It has rock in the name. Yeah, I don't have a better reason than a pun. Some of these are kind of scuffed, okay? So I edited all that yesterday, and now they've reworked Medic so that it is not at all the same thing. I also cannot justify making this a fairy type anymore because how is this, you know, this is still, you know what, it's a fairy type. Look, there's light here. Definitely not flying though. It can't, it can be mono fairy because I don't know what else I would. Let's go to the advanced towers. The majority of advanced towers are pretty standard when it comes to their damage type, with a lot of them just being like standard bullet or explosion. However, it is also where some of the more interesting types begin to shine. For example, electric type, which has 4 representatives in this section, being Electroshocker, Commander, DJ, and Ranger. I don't think I need to explain to you why Electroshocker is electric type, so let's move on to the other 3. I'm pretty sure that Ranger's attacks are meant to be some kind of plasma-based thing. Plasma Fists is an electric-based move, so it kind of just makes sense to make Ranger electric type. I started by making DJ a normal type because all sound moves are mainly classified as normal types, such as Boom Burst or Hyper Voice. I also added electric onto it because it has a lot of electronics and lights that are based in, and I felt that its ability could be some kind of electric based thing. I'm not really sure. Commander's yellow energy reminds me of electricity, and the fire rate boost icon is literally a lightning bolt, and something about Commander gave me like fairy type vibes. I'm not really sure why. I don't have a great reason for it, but it's another fairy type for the list. I'll put anything I can think of and post on screen right now, but like I don't know. Because there's still a lot to cover, I am gonna rush through the next few pretty quickly. I feel like I don't really have to justify them too much. Turret is steel type. Sure. Mortar is fire and steel because of splash damage, and it's a big metal cannon. I don't know. Merc base could have had like 4 types, and I genuinely wasn't sure what to do with it. But when I think of Merc base, I mainly think of Grenadier stacking and Riot Guards, which gave me the fire and fighting type vibe, so that's what I went with. Also, you can't have Pokemon without a fire fighting type, right? Like, Warden is fighting a ghost because I need ghost types, and Pizza Party is very spooky and scary, and Cowboy is ground and rock to represent the Badlands that you get it from, because Cowboy itself is a pretty standard tower when it comes to it's a guy with a gun. So I figured that giving it a more niche type would be more interesting. Minigunner is just mono steel. It's just a guy in full metal armor with a minigun. Pursuit is flying in fire because it's in the air and it shoots bombs. And Gatling gun is steel because for the same reason as turret. Come on, like it's basically the same thing. Since there are only 5 hardcore towers, I'll try and keep this section relatively quick. Brawler is a mono fighting type because it just attacks enemies in close combat with them. Pretty simple. Necromancer is ghost and dark because the resurrection aspect is pretty, it's kind of like a ghost, and also just something about him has a very dark vibe. Accelerator is mono electric. He shoots a beam of electricity at the enemies, so that kind of just makes sense. I think it's electricity. I don't know what else it is. It's a particle accelerator, so that sounds like electric. Engineer is steel type just because the sentries it builds are steel, and I don't even know how else I'm going to quantify it because there's a lot going on with Engineer. Hacker is mono normal type because I think it's probably one of the towers with the closest relationship to a Pokemon, that being Porygon Z, which is literally a computer virus, so I figured I might as well have them share a type as well. The event towers is where things get freaky. Why did I say? The event towers is where things get a little bit more interesting. A lot of these towers are based around a single gimmick that give them a more unique typing because it's not just basic guy with gun like we've been seeing a lot of. For example, Harvester is our first grass type added to the list with a mono grass because it's based off of these vine attacks. I thought about making it some kind of like poison type or something, or like psychic maybe for magic based off of this last purple level, but I didn't really know what was going on with it, so I just left it as mono grass. However, I did actually make a grass poison type still, that being Biologist. This is mainly due to the fact that the Nightshade and Ivy flowers focus a lot more on applying a debuff instead of doing straight just plant-based damage, with the Ivy doing straight up poison and the Nightshade doing the confusion thing. Speaking of poison types, there's actually 2 more. The first one being Toxic Gunner, which is pretty self-explanatory, and Jester. Now, Jester has 4 elemental bombs, being fire, ice, poison, and psychic, but I did the same thing I did with Merc Base, where I thought of the primary 2 that I think of when I think of the tower. That is psychic, because confusion was the only reason you should ever use this tower at all, and poison, because poison is still really strong, and there aren't very many poison types compared to some of the more popular types like fire or ice. Partly why there's so many fire and ice types is because there's a bunch in the event tower section. Fire includes Commando, Elementalist, Holopunk, Firework Technician, and Archer, and ice includes Elf Camp, Elementalist, Sledger, Snowballer, and Cryomancer. Some of these do have some interesting dual types like Commando with Steel, Holopunk with Dark, or Archer with Electric, but I feel like you can probably figure those ones out on your own. And the only ice dual type that there is one Elementalist being Fire Ice, and Snowballer, which I made normal because I guess in my mind, normal type is kind of just like shit. Every tower in the starter section is normal, and Snowballer fits the description of shit, so it makes sense to be normal. The leftover event towers we have are Gladiator, Executioner, and Slasher. Gladiator and Executioner are mono fighting and then mono dark respectively, and Slasher shares both of those typings, being fighting and dark. I went vibes based on these last three. I don't have great reasons for them, I just feel like it kind of makes sense. Finally, Swarmer's a bug type. If you're surprised by that one, then I think you might just be stupid. At the end of each segment, I've put up this screen that shows how many different unique towers there are for each type. And you'll notice here that even though that I was trying to get a representative for every single type, there's still two missing, those being water and dragon. Now, after I decided all of these types for all of the towers, I went back through to see if there was any stretch of logic I could make to get a water or a dragon type. I thought about like making a Holopunk dragon type, because I don't know, it kind of, that, you know, the gun looks a bit draconic, right? And then for water type, I was looking at like Cryomancer, because I don't know. It's clear that I would have to make more of a leap in logic that I would want to for those. And so instead I decided to make an entire new section of every single skin in the game. Well, not every. You see, I'm not going to take every single skin of every tower, give them a different type, right? Because if I open up Scout here, and I show you, like, half of these are just Scout wearing a different outfit. That's not going to change what his type is. So instead, I've decided to change skins that straight up, like, shift either what kind of being the tower is, for example, Shark Scout, or that change the effects on their attack in some way that makes me assume that they're not just using what their standard element would be. For example, like the Mage Necromancer, which turns all of its skeletons into like some kind of plant or tree monster. Don't know how they work, but they are different, so I figured I would make that one a grass type. And I don't want to list every single skin that adds a type to a tower because that would take forever, but I'll talk about a few that I do want to justify a bit, and in the description I'll put a list of every tower and every type that I've given to their skins, so you can see if you want, I guess, I don't know. Also, I didn't do skins that I don't have, so for example, all of the Ghost skins are Ghost type, or would be, but I only have Ghost Mini Gunner because that's the only one that was free after they were introduced. So yeah, let's talk about some of the skin series and that kind of thing. First of all of the Fallen skins are Ghost type. I figured all of the Fallen Heroes, as they're called, would make a lot of sense as Ghosts because I'm pretty sure the whole idea with them is that they were like, I don't know lore, but I think they're dead or something, so they're Ghost. Masquerade skins, I also wanted to make Ghosts, but I ended up making Psychic because I felt that 2 series that added Ghost types would just be too many Ghost types. And also, it does kind of look like some sort of psychic energy or like telepathy that they're using with these like weird red bits. So I thought Psychic was good for them. I made a bunch of the Valentine skins Fairy type because a lot of them have like different particle effects. Like for example, this Brawler has like the big pink effect around its landing. I figured that they would make sense as Fairy types just because here's where our water types come in. Because every single water type that I have other than Pirate Farm comes from the current summer battle pass. A lot of them are based off of an aquatic animal or use some kind of like water energy like this accelerator does, which ended up giving me 10 different skins that represent water types, which I thought was pretty cool. Finally, there's a lot of skins that are based off some kind of like spooky monster or like the pumpkin skins that were around and released on Halloween. I just made them all dark type because that's the idea I got from them. So like the pumpkin skins or like that one Frankenstein Ranger and like stuff that kind of gives off that kind of vibe, I made dark type. If you're still here, I don't know how you've been listening to me yap about Pokemon types for the past like 15 minutes, but I've got a little bit more for you if you like it, because there's a couple skins I do actually want to justify my reasoning on, because some of them might be a little confusing. For example, Cookie Scout. I made it Fairy type. The reason for this is because of Pokemon like Alcremie or Slurpuff that are like based on like a pastry kind of thing, and Cookie Scout is a cookie, which is like kind of close to a pastry, and so it's a sweet food, and I figured that I could go off the same logic that they use for Alcremie to make this Fairy type as well. I guess I made, what's this, Cryptid Freezer? I made this a Psychic type because it looks like some kind of shaman, and I think they deal with like spiritual or like magic stuff. I don't really understand what it really is, to be honest, but it gives me that, I think it's Psychic type. I should mention, we did get our first 2 dragon types finally. I'll equip both in my loadout here. First one, Lunar Rocketeer. It's Rocketeer, but Year of the Dragon, so that's a good one. And then the other one is Accelerator. Legend Accelerator, because it's a dragon type, man. It's literally dragon. Look at it, it's right there, there's a dragon. So that was pretty massive. Most of the skins there aren't a lot of one-off skins at all, really. I made Messi a normal type. Where's he? Made Messy normal type because he's just a guy. Other than that, though, there's nothing too crazy. So, thanks for watching to the end if you're still here.